Spider-Man No Way Home out in theaters. Now, I will do this review in two parts. First will be spoiler-free for anyone who hasn't seen it and doesn't want their fun spoiled. And then I'll go into the more plot details, spoilery stuff that I want to talk about as well. So here we go. Story picks up exactly the moment we left off in Far From Home. Mysterio reveals Spider-Man's identity to the world and frames him for his murder. Obviously, that leads to massive upheavals in the life of Peter Parker himself, but also his family and his friends, which eventually leads him to seek help from Doctor Strange. Strange prepares a spell to make the world forget Peter's identity, but because of Peter's own meddling, things go very, very wrong, and visitors from other universes, aka other film series, start showing up. As we've seen in the trailers already, these include Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus and Jamie Foxx's Electro, but also a couple more people. Which then means that Peter has to fix things and various events happen, and I'm not saying anything else at this point in time. Now, the shortest version of this review is that the film is straight up amazing. Much, much better than I ever anticipated it to be, and I think better than it had any right to be, weirdly enough. When I first heard that they would be, bringing in Doctor Strange and playing with the multiverse concepts already and bringing all these past villains from before in a single film, I admit I thought it was a terrible idea. I thought there's no way that a single film can reasonably support all of this and not be bloated and overstuffed. But it does. It really does support it. And what's more, it still has some surprises preserved which were not revealed in any of the trailers or promotional materials. I think its biggest achievement is that it takes on so many different elements and straight up just nails each and every one of them. The film feels very seamless, very organic when it comes to who shows up when and what events happen in what order. It's got great pacing, where on the one hand it keeps moving forward and never gets boring, but on the other it's also not afraid to just let things breathe, to have characters just be together in a scene and talk without the need to jump straight into the next action sequence. Those are, of course, brilliant as always. The CGI looks incredible, and perhaps even more impressive than the obvious actiony stuff is the more subtle CG, which would be the de-aging on some of the actors in the film. I think that Disney just keeps pushing the envelope on this front. The music is superb, blending new score with musical cues from previous films, also using known themes in new arrangements. Like towards the end there's a moment where there's this beautiful, like, epic orchestral rendition of the usually playful Spider-Man theme playing. And I also have to say that the film just worked for me on an emotional level. It took me on a ride. It's very, very funny when it wants to be, but it also has heavier emotional moments which land superbly, and I'll admit a couple of times I got teary-eyed. And also what's important is that there is this emotional balance as well, where the humor never undercuts the serious moments, never takes away from the appropriate emotion of the scene. Really, it's just impressive stuff. The producers said before the film that it would sort of be the most ambitious Spider-Man film ever made, and also the equivalent of Avengers Endgame for Spidey fans. And unbelievably, it kind of is, which also means that I think for the more casual fans, it won't land as perfectly. I think it's still a good film, even when you're not as invested in the character over the years, but and its many iterations in film. But I can see, those casual fans not being impressed as I was. It definitely is a movie for the fans first and foremost, but I don't think it should be in any way criticized for it. On the contrary, it's impressive how well it handles all the fan service and how happy it will make all the lifelong fans of Spider-Man be. It is easily top 3 MCU film for me right away, and a brilliant, exciting, emotional ride that feels like wonderful ending in many, many ways, but also an enticing new beginnings in others. Just go see it as fast as you can, that's all I'm saying. Now, for the spoiler part, this is where it begins. If you don't want to get spoiled, just turn this review off at this moment right away. Okay, so I really wanted to talk about how much of an achievement it is that Kevin Feige and the rest of the Marvel crew managed to come up with a film that basically wraps up three different generations of Spider-Man in all the right ways without feeling artificial or shoved in. The film is first and foremost the story of Tom Holland's MCU Spidey, but it is also the perfect send-off for Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. It was beyond fantastic to see them both again, and it was the first time ever that I saw people clapping in a movie theater here in Poland. What's crucial for me is that there is the perfect balance here as well. It could easily have gone badly either way. Have them be in the film too little, and it would just feel like a forced, glorified cameo. Have them be in the film too much, and it would feel like it takes away from the main storyline. But they are in it just the perfect amount, and they actually play important roles in the story and in the development of Holland's Peter. They also just give great performances. I mean, Toby's look at Tom in the glider scene towards the end is perhaps his just best acted scene as Spider-Man ever, and all without saying a single word. And Andrew Garfield he just steals away every single scene he's in. He just makes it abundantly clear that any shortcomings of the Amazing Spider-Man series were not his personal fault. The writing and the direction and the way they were produced, those films, you can criticize them, but he really is a fantastic Peter Parker and a fantastic Spider-Man. I also want to say that the villains are all great. In the case of like Electro, he's vastly improved from before, and in the case of Norman Osborn, just wonderfully updated while staying very true to the original spirit of the character. I thought that Willem Dafoe is brilliant in his performance, tragic and terrifying depending on the persona in charge. And finally, I thought it was just a very elegant and poetic way to handle Aunt May's final scene, because it was like this light bulb turned on in my mind suddenly. I realized that all this time we were wondering why the MCU never mentions Uncle Ben directly or references him as Peter's biggest inspiration, but May was Uncle Ben this whole time, hidden in plain sight, and we only realized it at the very end. One final point actually is about the ending. I think it's a genius way to wrap the trilogy up in a satisfying way and at the same time do a soft reset of Spider-Man, immediately solving all of the issues that the hardcore fans had with this iteration of the character. That he has Stark Tech, that he gets the costume from other people, that he can count on Avengers support, that so many people know him, etc. Well, now at the end, he really finally becomes his own Spider-Man. He's poor, he's on his own, he has a handmade costume, he has to make his own way in life. And that's why I said it feels like a beginning in some ways, because as much as the film gives us the epilogue and the closure for Toby and Andrew, and then finishes the story of this young, upstart, just starting out Spider-Man, in a way it also begins the story of a new Spider-Man, swinging out into the unknowns of adulthood. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what comes next.